Utah State, um, weave the Utah State Standards of Effective Teaching and Framework. So I have those in here, but
Uh-huh.
is it just that I need to, at the end of like my sections, go back and say, based off of rigor framework, activity, and then this together is creating my framework to be able to do this?
Yes.
Is that kind of what's
So,
missing?
okay. Yeah, I know it's not, I think I have to do a better job of explaining it. Because it's definitely hard to understand just in writing. Um, so let's say that your framework that you chose was Ladson Billings, just because it's only got 3 components. So that's kind of easier than the other ones have more components.
Mhm.
So so the Utah standards of effective teaching, those are more like what to teach, what they need to know, but not necessarily how, right?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
um so that's kind of the trick is like how do the standards go together with the components of the framework.
Okay.
So let's say um let's see. I need some examples.
So like
Um
for mine, I'm using a lot of the Hammond 2013 to support, because like the Utah Effective Teaching Standards 1 and 2 basically like mirror the Ready for Rigor framework.
Perfect.
And so
Yeah.
I have that. And then I just said, like, according to this framework, teachers that are culturally responsive take advantage of the fact our brains are wired for connection. So that's Hammond. And then I said, to be an effective teacher, you have to establish these relationships because that's what the standards 1 and 2 are saying. And you do
Perfect.
that by
Yeah.
making connection. Is that ideally?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That is where I think where some are struggling with like how do they fit under those components of the framework will fit with certain standards. So I hear you weaving them together. Yeah, which
Okay.
ones fit under that. So that's exactly right. And then
Okay.
when you're looking at your own teaching, then you're using that as a lens. So you're saying for example, if you were using Ladson Billings high levels of academic achievement, then what are you doing in your classroom? Maybe that is fostering high levels of academic achievement. And that's going to relate to like standard number, what, 2 with instructional design clarity.
hmm
So
Okay.
do you
So
see
like
how
for
they go
example,
together?
going back to the standards 1 and 2 of connection. So I talk about like how my district has implemented this essential 8 framework.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
as like a district and like our coaching cycles we're doing right now, we're using like the 5-to-1 relationship building. And so I wrote
Oh,
about that. Like that's how I am fostering it. So I guess in that section, I just said like within my own classroom, I can implement these frameworks. Do I just need to directly say this is how I'm doing 5-to-1 in my classroom?
yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
I'll
Just
change
say it
that then.
explicitly. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Hmm.
perfect.
And a lot of times with breaking up the paragraphs, that will be like, what is the main idea? And then when it switches out to another idea, but I get what you're saying. Like if it's tell me, show me, so what? It
Yeah, that's
does
kind of
kind
what
of
I
get
was
it.
like, oh, but there were some things
Yeah,
I was able to break up for
yeah.
the most part. It
Hmm.
wasn't too bad.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I
Yeah. But
that
sometimes
makes
with
sense.
the so what, it'll be kind of leaning into another topic. And so as a reader, then those long paragraphs, you kind of get lost in them.
Yeah.
So
So I
mhm.
guess so you mentioned tighten up the framework you're building by cobbling pieces together. So basically kind of what I already have them cobbled together. I just need to make sure at the end I'm saying by doing this it follows this, and this.
Yes, be very explicit about that. Yeah.
Okay,
And
perfect.
transitions really help too. As far as when you're finishing one section, you're giving a hint about why you're going to move to the next section. And then as you start the next section, why that section above was important to what you are talking about now. How are they linked together?
Okay.
So
I'll
that
add a
makes it
few more
pretty,
of those.
yeah.
Because I feel like I have like the order of my paper, it like flows. But
Yeah.
that also could just be like my brain. Like to me it flows, but maybe it's
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
So
And
okay.
I do feel like overall really everybody had really great outlines, and but then in an actual narrative, then it's got to flow a little more so that it's not just standards, framework. They do
Yeah.
go together.
Need to add some personalization in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
And so I think we're more familiar with the standards. And so that's why sometimes we'll think about, okay, how am I going to make my teaching fit with those standards, which we do have to do, but then we're also cobbling in our exemplary teaching. And what they usually the biggest thing that kind of separates exemplary teaching from maybe good teaching or not so good teaching, it is that the teachers will know how to address that so what factor, that critical consciousness. So that's always the trickiest part for teachers. But if you think about like, what did Big Mama do? She knew that they were out in the field. She knew she was aware of the obstacles that they face. So as teachers, we might be teaching in a Title I school, so we're aware of the obstacles that learners are facing, but we're not using that as an excuse not to teach them. Instead, we're using that as even more of a motivation to teach them. Or if it's like gender, we don't allow girls to disengage, because girls are pretty much socialized to be passive observers, even from kindergarten. And they come in really excited and wanting to know about science and math. And pretty soon we start combing that out of them. And so as a teacher, I'm going to be aware of, that's the so what. I need to make sure that the girls are just, you can do math too. You're going to do science too. And so that's the so what part of it. And
Okay.
most
Yeah, I
of the
need to add a
time,
little bit of that.
standards, they don't really take into account that. They do implicitly, because they're saying, well, all learners need to do that. But there are like systematic things that are keeping certain groups out, whether it's gender, whether it's sexuality, whether it's primary language. And so exemplary teachers know that, they own it, they work on it, and they make sure that every student has that.
Okay. Perfect. I mean, it gives me somewhere to go. Off of,
Okay,
I
good.
just was like, because I felt like I kind of have it, but I think I can just directly say more of what I'm doing rather
Yeah.
than say
Yep. Yep.
this should be done. Because I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I do
And
a lot of that. I just haven't
that will
realized to do
help
it.
you, as you continue with your writing in graduate school, just say it directly. I think kind of in undergraduate we do a lot of like reflective writing and
Yeah, that's definitely been the trickiest. Is like I'm in my last semester now, and so
oh yeah.
it's been like so hard to just honestly say.
Yeah. And I think as graduate faculty, not just at SUU, but everywhere I've been, we kind of assume that graduate students know that, but how would you know that? Because in
Yeah,
undergraduate, we kind of write it as like fiction writing. We're like building a plot line and bringing
that's
up
been
the
like the most
climax.
interesting thing is
In
Judd is
graduate
always just
school
like,
writing, you have to actually state it out front, up front, where you're going, why you're going there. And so
yep,
that's not in our nature to do that.
no, it's not. And that's been the hardest is like my biggest thing has been like, okay, this sounds fancy, it sounds good, but I want you to change it and simple, make it simple. And I'm like, okay, great.
Yeah,
So
so true. It's like
yeah.
just even I had to unlearn, I would write these huge sentences, like a sentence that was almost a paragraph. And it was like, no, 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 no. So I had to unlearn all that kind of stuff. So that,
Well,
mm,
thanks. It makes me feel
okay.
better.
I'm
But yeah,
super
no,
glad
that
that
was
was,
just it. It was just, yeah, I want to make sure I was understanding it right before I
yeah,
went all the way into doing my second draft and then it
yes.
not right
Yes.
again. So,
Okay. And
okay.
please don't think you're alone, because I mean, that's patterns. How do you bring the framework together with the standards? That's kind of been across the board. And so that kind of tells me I need to do a better job explaining how those go together.
I feel like they connect, but more so just like, okay, you understand they connect, like how are you applying it?
Yes.
Because like I
Yeah.
understand, like, oh look, like ready for rigor framework, obviously that applies because we want high expectations of our students. So
Yes.
like yeah, those go hand in hand, but then it's like, okay, like the application part of it. Okay, now that you
And
know this,
that's
like how
just
are
the
you
next
doing
step.
it?
So I
So
think if you can understand how they go together, then you can think about, okay, now what does that look like in my classroom?
okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Have a good rest of your day.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.